Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Happy early Thanksgiving.
And right back at you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And of course, everyone will be actually hearing this on Thanksgiving. So anyone that actually is listening to this on said Thursday, then happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. Hope you are enjoying your day. And then, of course, the food coma that will come the day after. So I know I'll be enjoying that with the prime rib that we're going to have.
So I think it's appropriate then that for Thanksgiving you found the biggest turkey that you know to be your guest.
There you go. Or maybe the biggest ham. I mean, either way, right?
They both work well.
Yeah. No, you're a busy guy. I don't even think I know half of what you've got going on. Is it true that you've got some kind of cruise or something coming up? Or it's already happened? Or what's the deal with that? I overheard something.
It's coming up in May of 2019. It's the Wicked Waters Cruise. It's myself and Stephanie Burke, who is a co-host on Spooky Southcoast, who is also a psychic medium. And you've probably seen her on shows like Kindred Spirits and Ghost Hunters. Yes. And then Scott Porter, who people know from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers of Ghost Asylum and Haunted Towns and Haunted Live. The three of us will be leading the Wicked Waters Cruise. We're going to sail from Boston to Bermuda, right through the Bermuda Triangle.
Nice. Well, should we wish you luck now? I'm sure that's the ongoing joke, right?
Well, I mean, I've done this cruise before. I was part of Amy Bruni's Strange Escapes cruise that went to Bermuda a couple years ago, and I was a little, there was a little bit of trepidation about going through the triangle. Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, people do it every single day. There's never any problem. But of course, it would be the one time that I go through it that there'd be an issue. But I had no problems. We did a UFO watch while we were in the heart of the triangle as we were sailing to Bermuda, and had a couple of weird things in the sky that were happening. And we did a little bit of so we had John Tenney on board, and he had some of his occultist friends actually tried to summon something under the water, and sure enough, we saw lights under the water. There was something swimming around with like these little lights coming on. So
no kidding. So he's doing a summoning, and you see light. You're in the middle of the ocean, and there's lights coming from underneath the water.
And it's not like you kind of you're on the cruise for 7 days, so you get pretty used to the ship, and so it's not like it's anything coming from the ship that's happening underneath there. You're seeing these self-contained like round balls of light that are kind of floating around under the water. So maybe when we do it, we'll see if Tenney can get his occultist friends out in Detroit to summon those things once again for us.
That's so cool. So they were moving independently of each other, from what you could tell, or did it seem like it was one craft or something?
No, it seemed like it was like different little balls of light moving around.
How long did you guys watch that for?
Maybe about like 10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Probably not very easy to get that on record, even on a decent camera, I suppose.
Yeah, you really couldn't see it at all. Yeah. There was a couple of people that tried to capture it on their cell phone cameras, but you couldn't make it out. Same thing with the UFOs. I mean, we could see them with our own eyes, but you tried to record it, and all you would just see is just all the stars in the sky, because you're out in the middle of nowhere, so you actually can see the entire sky lit up. And then the other problem is like, we really can't, when we're standing on the deck of the ship and we're trying to look at these things, we really can't be like, hey, do you guys mind killing all the lights on this giant cruise ship for us so we can see better?
But of course, then again, you're like looking around like, don't you guys know who's on board? Shut this thing down. Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because even with technology nowadays that we have in our pockets. And, I know that on my phone, and I shut off this option because it just took up an incredible amount of space, even for short videos. But supposedly it shoots in 4K. But even then, if you go and you zoom in on a video, or even if you're just taking a still shot, it just becomes so bad if anything's a distance away. It's just pointless, as you said, so...
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is, people always say, well, with all the technology in everybody's pocket all the time, we should have more proof of these things. But like, tell me how often you're going to be in that situation, and the first thing you're going to think of doing is, pulling out your cell phone, turning on your camera. You're just going to stay fixated on what's happening.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know the one thing that I saw, it wasn't the first thing that crossed my mind, even if, my age and the year, I didn't have a cell phone, but I'm just saying I know for a fact that would have been the last thing on my mind. Even if I had one of my nicer digital cameras the actual film camera I had back in the day, even if I had been riding with that thing, I would have been like, oh yeah, let me just snap a couple shots here and get these guys on film. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind, so yeah.
Right. I can't tell you how many times that, I've seen just, different things and because I, do mostly ghost stuff. And never thinking to myself, gee, I should pull my phone out of my pocket and actually try to record this.
Right.
Like, nope, I'm just going to keep having these shadow people walk around me and not do anything to disturb them.
Right. Well, yeah, because usually it seems like if it's a more interactive and not a residual type of a situation, if you do that, then you're going to affect the fact that they're even there with you. So.
Absolutely.
All right, so everybody, in case you haven't recognized his voice, this is Tim Weisberg, my fellow guest host on Midnight in the Desert, and also, as he mentioned in the beginning, one of the hosts of Spooky Southcoast, and he also authored Ghosts of the Southcoast. So you are in I hope that I say this right, East Wareham, Massachusetts?
Hey, you nailed it. People in Massachusetts don't even say it correctly.
Really? Well,
oh, yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know exactly what that is, if you look at a map of Massachusetts and you know how Cape Cod has that arm, well, I literally live in the armpit of Massachusetts.
So you live in the armpit and you're a masshole, all in one. See?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I try to not have the accent, so if I do have it, I'll be upset.
Isn't it so jerky when people are like, okay, I need you to say, let's get in the car and drive real far. And you must go, you know what? Screw you. Really, honestly.
It's almost like when somebody asks you to say wolf.
Yeah, exactly. I get really offended. I'm like, hey, at least Benedict Cumberbatch can't say penguin. I posted a video and I'm like, okay, I don't feel as bad because I say wolf. And then now I can't even say that. Because when I say the L, I feel like I'm really trying to overpronounce it. So I just say it my way. And then I happen to come across a video where... And he was like narrating something like kind of a big deal for like, I don't know, one of those documentaries. It's about penguins. And he said penguins. And I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one saying something stupid. Just mispronouncing it. So yeah, I guess we all have our little things, right?
Oh, sure. I used to say, words that end in ing. I used to always say, it was like an in. So I'd always say, instead of something, it was something.
Yeah. Ain't that
so I had to learn how to try to not do that anymore.
Yeah, it kind of bums me out that you tamp down your accent, your Massachusetts accent. I quite like that accent, but I understand. It's okay. But if you want to let it loose here on the Fray, you can.
I don't know if I can do it anymore. There's a clip on YouTube of there used to be this like regional New England sports show that was on every night after the news, and they used to take call-ins. And so there's a YouTube clip of like 19-year-old me calling in to talk about the Celtics. And I don't know if I was trying to like play up the masshole accent or if I really just did have it, but I totally have it in that clip. So
you say it's floating around somewhere as far as it's way down deep in the archives and don't try to look for it, or is it around somewhere?
No, if you look up, I can send you a link. It's the old Mike Adams Sports World, and it's the Lyndon Byers episode. So maybe I should probably pull it out there. I every once in a while I put it up on Facebook and Twitter and have everybody have a good laugh at it. But
yeah.
I should put it out on Spooky Southcoast. Be like, see, it could be worse when you're listening. I could still sound like this.
I love that accent. All right, so anyway, I'm sorry to do this to you, but, maybe not everybody knows about Tim Weisberg. So I'm going to ask the age-old question, and we've all been asked it 1,000 times when we come on other people's shows, but what was your inception? Why are you into the paranormal?
Well, I mean, I've always been weird, so that helps.
It does.
But throughout my entire life, like, I had different experiences that I couldn't explain, but nothing really, like, overt. Like old hag kind of stuff and prophetic dreams and things like that. And it wasn't until my aunt and uncle bought a haunted house when I was a teenager, and it was in the heart of what is known here in Massachusetts as the Bridgewater Triangle, which is basically the same idea of the Bermuda Triangle. It's a paranormal vortex where every type of phenomena happens. And so they bought this house that was seemingly haunted. And I remember the first time, well, we'd heard the rumors. They would always talk in whispers about it at my grandmother's house when the whole family would get together. And then I'd come into the room and they'd say, "Oh, no, we're talking about stuff that kids should know about." So I knew that there was something going on that they were trying to keep under their hats. But one night I was actually staying there, and long story short, there were some steel bulkhead doors that we actually caught opening and closing on their own. Slamming shut, opening, slamming shut, opening. And those are very heavy steel bulkhead doors on a night that there wasn't any wind anyway. And to see that happen, I was like, okay, now there's definitely something going on here. Now what else can we see as a result of it? And so we would have like faucets that would turn on their own, and shadows that would walk down the hallway when there was nobody there, and you'd hear like rattling sounds at night, and things of that nature. And that's when I realized that this stuff is real and there's something to it. But I kind of laid dormant on that interest for a long time. I would still read books about it, and when the internet first came into my life, when I was a college student, I started looking up stuff on the internet. And then when Ghost Hunters hit and everything started to really come out into the mainstream, right around that same time, I was doing a sports show here at the station where I work, and the program director said, "Hey, we really like what you're doing on this sports show with 2 other people, but we'd like to give you your own show. Is there anything that you'd like to really talk about?" And so I pitched a paranormal show, and that's how Spooky Southcoast was born. And now, almost 13 years later, we're still going strong.
That's awesome. I actually had the chance to visit the Bridgewater Triangle, and the side, I don't know if there's different sides of it you can come in, or everybody has to turn in where that Freetown Fall River sign is. Mm-hmm. Is that the only place to go in over there?
Well, that's actually in there's different definitions of the triangle. So when the Bridgewater Triangle term was originally coined, Lauren Coleman is the one who coined the term in his book Mysterious America. And he defined it as he was taking in all these anomalous reports from around Massachusetts, and he seemed to notice that there was a high amount of stuff that was happening in the Bridgewaters. So there's Bridgewater proper, East Bridgewater, and West Bridgewater. And so he originally made the triangle with those 3 towns as the vertices. But over the years, we've had to expand that triangle as we've realized that this stuff is happening more and more outside of those borders. So Aaron Cadju and Manny Familari made a documentary in 2013 or 14, and they defined the triangle as being Abington, Rehoboth, and Bridgewater, which is a much wider area. But I actually just described the entire triangle as being, up into southern New Hampshire, encompassing all of southeastern Massachusetts and into Rhode Island, because these reports just happen everywhere. So by my geographic definition, the Freetown State Forest is actually like kind of the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. And when you see all the different types of phenomena that happens there and hear all the different true crime stories and everything else that's gone on there, it's also kind of the it's the allegorical heart of the triangle as well.
Yeah, and I was in there during the day, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to look around. We were in there for a few hours and walked a couple of the smaller trails. It's creepy in there even during the day, though. It definitely has a weird vibe. And finding, of course, back in the quote-unquote old days, one of the only things from a house that would survive a long period of time would be the stone fireplaces. And it's very odd to come upon this. I mean, it was probably 13, 14, 15 feet tall, a stone fireplace. And it had that one white stone up in the middle near the center at the top. And I forget now what that stood for. I looked it up a long time ago, but anyhow, we found a couple different fireplaces, and there was one car that seemed like an older model that was sitting on the side of the road, and it wasn't near any trails or anything. So that was kind of one of the things you're like, well, wonder what they're doing, or wonder if they're still around, because of all the, like you said, even the true crime stuff, you kind of wonder, well, don't really want to stop here and see what's going on. So,
well, I'm sure that you, when you were out here and in the forest, you visited the Assonet Ledge, which it's a ledge that overlooks like a big drop into some water, and the story is the Lady of the Ledge is seen there, and it's an urban legend, like a kind of a bit of folklore, because it was kind of a man-made quarry there, so it wasn't always as sharp of a ledge as it is now. But the legend is that there was an Indian princess who was in love with one of the white settlers, and her father wouldn't let them be together. Jumped off that ledge and killed themselves. And so people now report seeing the Lady of the Ledge walking around up there in her white dress, and people will stand on the ledge and suddenly feel the need to jump off. Like they'll just feel overcome with grief and feel like they need to jump off. So we were up there investigating that story one time, and all of a sudden a car pulls up, and a guy is sitting there, and then another car pulls up, and then the two of them get out of the car, and then right in front of us they just conduct a drug deal to get back into their cars and go off on their way. So yeah. It's the living things that are much more scarier than the ghosts inside that forest.
Right. I love the Lady in White stories or the Gray Lady stories. It seems like a lot of locations have tales like that.
Absolutely. And another one that we have here that you find in a lot of other places is the red-headed hitchhiker. The phantom hitchhiker that you pick him up on the side of the road and he disappears from your vehicle. So we've got one of those stories here too. So it just seems like all of those tropes, they all fit in neatly into the Bridgewater Triangle.
One place that I had a hard time finding, and we weren't even sure when I thought we were upon it that we were in it, but the Hockomock Swamp. I just felt like we weren't zeroed in well enough in there, and the GPS at that point wasn't working very well, and I don't even know if it would come up on the GPS as a Hockomock Swamp.
Yeah, it's a really hard place to find if you don't know exactly where you're going, and it's a really hard place to get lost in, even if you do know exactly where you're going, because there's a lot of power lines around that area, and that screws up some of the GPS signals and the cell signals. So it's real easy to get lost and to not have any technology to aid you in getting out. But what's interesting about that is they're putting in a rail system that goes from Boston to the south coast of Massachusetts. It's been something that's been talked about for 30 years, and they're finally getting ready to make it happen in the next couple of years. And one of the future plans is they're eventually going to build an electric route that goes from Boston to this area that will be far faster than the one they're putting in now. But when they put that one in, it's going to go right through the heart of the Hockomock Swamp.
Oh my gosh.
So then the question becomes, what's going to happen when this train is going through the Hockomock Swamp every day? Is that going to change the paranormal energies there? And are there, because there's Bigfoot sightings there. There's a Bigfoot family that's believed to live there, and there's giant snakes that have been seen and giant cats. So are people going to be sitting in the train going through, looking out the window and seeing a Bigfoot walk by?
Right. Yeah, I just wonder if, much like some of these haunted locations, once people start knocking down walls or remodeling anything, sometimes that actually will ramp things up. So hopefully that'll be the case, and they won't just run and change their minds and go somewhere else, because it's such a famous location, or infamous, I guess, depending on who you talk to and what traumatizing stories people have.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. That's what I think is, the downside of progress. The downside of progress is going to make it so that there's less opportunities for people to have those kind of experiences.
Right. So are you erring on that side of things, that it kind of makes you sad that there would be a railway going through there?
Yeah, I mean, it does. We really need the railway, and the faster the better. But at the same time, there is a lot of mystery around the Hockomock Swamp that I think this can kind of debunk some of that. So the bad part is, we're going to disturb nature, and we're going to cause these issues, and who knows how it's going to affect things. But on the other side of it, like maybe then people are going to get to see the swamp, but never would have seen it before.
Right.
And they'll appreciate it more. But you know how this is going to work. They're going to build a rail line through the middle of it, and then eventually they're going to start slashing and burning the forest and turning it into the swamp. They're going to start turning it into, housing developments and all that. And this one little last mystery pocket of Massachusetts will just get gentrified like everything else.
That's what's really sad. I know here in Vegas, it seems like every time I leave my house, we've got a lot of desert on one side, and then the whole rest of it is very populated, but there's very little of it left. And every time I get in my car and I start another drive, I look over and there's another sign for another development that's going to be going in. I'm like, oh, you guys just can't. They just don't stop. It's unreal.
Well, what's interesting about the triangle, though, is like they can do that all they want, and they've done it through a lot of areas around here. But what's going to happen is maybe eventually the triangle is going to start to fight back.
As demented as this might sound, I really kind of hope that it does. And I'm not saying that I hope people get hurt or anything, but we have heard of certain areas, maybe there's a curse and you're not supposed to build there, and just things go wrong and nothing ever gets finished. And actually, I kind of hope maybe that's the case. Maybe they just have to find a different route that just goes around or something. Yeah,
and in the end, like maybe that's what it's going to come down to. Like maybe like the conservationists will get
right.
and be part of this, and maybe they'll find another way to get it done. But as of right now, it'll be really interesting to see what happens when those first workers go in to start figuring out where they're going to lay the line. The first surveyors go in and they come out saying, "I don't ever want to go back into that place ever again."
Just scare the ever loving shit out of them, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
I have an idea though. It could be much like the snowy owl situation where they had to stop foresting or deforesting in that area. We could just find something like some kind of a unique frog or a bird, and we'll just let it go there in the Hockomock, and then maybe help save that area.
Yeah, but there are some endangered animals around here that some of them could end up being in there, but I think the ultimate endangered animal would be, of course, Bigfoot. So if he wants to, I don't know if he's been reading the local newspapers and he knows what's coming his way, but if he does, maybe now's the time to kind of make himself known. I
hope so. He's just standing there, just giving the evil eye to the guys that are just out there surveying, going, okay, here's where we're going to put this and this, and Bigfoot's over there, just full stink eye. That would be amazing.
Either that, or he's going to use it as a chance to make a buck. Like Bigfoot carries your bags onto the train for you. And...
Yeah, he's got the cap and the whole nine, right? Blows the train whistle. That'd be amazing. All right, so let's move on from Bridgewater, and just in general. I know you've been a lot of places, but and it might actually, you may not even have one, but do you have a favorite location that you've gone to, or maybe once or maybe numerous times, that you love to investigate?
I mean, I have different places that have touched my heart in different ways. So, like the Lizzie Borden house, I've done over 24 investigations there. So, I've always had a lot of great things that have happened there. The Houghton Mansion in North Adams, Massachusetts is where I first shook hands with a shadow person. The S.K. Pierce Mansion in Gardner is the only time I've ever felt like I was in a horror movie on an investigation. We get to investigate a theme park here, Edaville Family Theme Park, which is a train-related theme park that nobody else ever gets to investigate, and we get to go there in the off hours and check that place out. And then there's a new one that's kind of built up over the last couple of years as being a fast favorite, and that's the Oliver House in Middleborough, Massachusetts, right in the heart of the Triangle, where it's a place where Benjamin Franklin visited, and he found some letters in a closet that proved that the family that lived there was loyal to the crown and during the Revolution, and he ratted them out to the colonial army and ended up kind of ruining the family name. And that place just has some insane activity with shadow people in the basement. I saw some phantom legs walking down the stairs that disappeared, and having pictures that came flying off the wall. So that's quickly gaining a good spot in my heart for favorite places to go.
All right, Tim, let's take a quick break with a word from this episode's sponsor. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. It's a non-intimidating way for stock market newcomers to invest for the first time with true confidence. It features a simply designed, easy-to-use app with charts and market data. You place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can discover new stocks and track favorite companies with personalized news feed and custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Sign up at thefray.robinhood.com. That's thefray.robinhood.com. So, something that captured my attention, and no one will be surprised that I asked you to maybe touch on this a little more, but you said you shook hands with a shadow person. Would you mind kind of expounding upon that a little bit?
Amazing experience. So before that day, I was always somebody who would, I was kind of beg and zesh, ish, you could say, with some of my investigations. I would get very confrontational on investigations with spirits and try to get them to, perform for me more than anything. And so this was the day that my mind was changed, and I realized that, the old cliche, ghosts are people too, where this mansion, the Houghton Mansion in North Adams, it was built by one of the town's kind of founders and one of its first mayors, and he built this huge mansion. And then when he died, there was actually a tragic accident that led to his demise. It killed his daughter, and the driver, the chauffeur, and butler of the family thought it was his fault, so he killed himself. And then a short time later, A.C. Houghton died of a broken heart.
Oh, geez.
But it's a really sad story. But when he died, the mansion was left to the Freemasons, and so they actually built a Masonic lodge in the middle of this giant mansion. So it's almost like there was like a U-shaped footprint for the mansion, and then in the middle of that U, they put this giant Masonic hall. And so we're in the very back of that Masonic hall. There's a secret area on the second floor that nobody knows about, and hardly anybody ever would go up there. And as we were up there, we would see these processions of shadow people walking through. And at one point, we're standing on either side of a hallway, myself and all the other people that were there. And the procession of shadow people walked between us. And when I said to the person across from me, "Are you seeing this right now?" one of the shadow people actually turned and looked at me when I talked.
Wow.
And then just kept on marching. So that was pretty interesting. But then later on in the night, there was just one shadow person at the very far end of the room, and I was able to coax it to come down to where I was standing with some other investigators, and we got it to stand kind of right in front of us. And I held up my hand and to shake his hand, and I felt a hand wrapped around mine, and start pumping my arm up and down in a handshake motion.
Oh,
and I'm not afraid to admit I just started crying because it was such a profound experience.
I don't blame you. I would have too. That is shocking. Okay, so you said that you were able to coax it. What did you do to get it to interact with you like that?
I basically just tried to explain that we were there to communicate. Mm-hmm. For some reason, we were kind of feeling like it was the shadow of a very young man. And that he was kind of shy. So we were just saying like, hey, we're just here to be friends. We're just here to come and visit. We're going to be leaving in a little while, so we're not going to stick around. We just want to, kind of get to know you and check out this cool mansion and be part of whatever it is that you guys have going on here. And so the more that we talked to him in kind of a nice, soothing manner, the closer it would step to us. And it gets to the point where you're looking at a shadow at the very end of the wall, and you're like, okay, that could be anything. That could be one of us, even though every time I see a shadow person, I make everybody in the room shake their hands over their heads so I can make sure it's not them.
Right.
But, it's still, when it's far away, you're kind of like, well, it could be anything. But the more it started walking closer, and the more you could start to see not only the defining characteristics of a human shape, but also to kind of be able to tell that it had a third dimension to it. So not only was it a shadow that looked like a human, but it was solid. And it had depth, and so you could actually see kind of around it. That's when we started to realize, okay, this is definitely some sort of intelligent entity to have walked down here. And then we really started trying to turn on the charm, as much as we could, because if you can get a shadow person to come that close, why not try to get him to come up all the way?
Right. I bet you weren't expecting that though when you put your hand out.
I was actually asking for a fist bump, because I thought that would be the easiest way for it to have the energy to make contact.
Right.
So I'm like, I just held up my fist and I said, can you give me a fist bump? And one of the investigators that was with me, his name was Frank, he elbowed me really hard in the ribs. And he said, "You idiot. Like whoever this is doesn't know what a fist bump is. Put your hand out and offer to shake his hand like a man." And so that's what I did. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Will you shake my hand?" And that's when, it was just, you could see the hand go over mine and wrap around. And then as soon as it made that contact and enveloped my hand, it just started immediately going into the up and down pumping motion. Wow. And so then Frank was standing right next to me and he said, "Would you shake my hand as well?" And so it did. It shook his hand too. But he held his composure a little better than I did.
Wow, that is an incredible story. I haven't caught that from you yet, so that was cool to hear. So it shakes your hand and it shakes Frank's hand. Does it turn and go, or did it just disappear at that point?
So at that point, we continued trying to talk to it for a little bit more because we were using the EchoVox. And so we were hoping that by using EchoVox and having it standing right there, it would be able to talk to us one-on-one. But for some reason, we really weren't getting anything out of the EchoVox. A friend of mine was also using dowsing rods at the time. She's very big into using the dowsing rods. And she just kind of felt the energy that was manipulating those rods kind of fade away. And then when you looked, the shadow was gone. I wish they were still open for paranormal investigation because it's one of the greatest places around. But the Masonic Lodge sold it a couple of years ago, or put it on the market to be sold. And from what I understand, the people that were buying it were not interested in letting anybody come in for paranormal reasons.
Shoot, that's what I was going to ask is, do you go back there and do you think there's a chance that might happen again with the handshake shadow person? That's incredible.
Oh, I'd love to go back. I know some people that investigated there after we did, and nobody had that same type of an experience, but everybody that went there would always come out of there with some sort of a story because it was just so active, and it was very much a maze-like place. And actually, the night that we were doing that investigation, not coincidentally, well, maybe coincidentally, was our special guest that night was Dave Schrader. And so Dave was actually there. He wasn't in the room when that happened, but he was there investigating with us, and he actually had, I think, his first psychomantium experience that night.
That was where the psychomantium experience for him happened.
Yep.
Holy cow! Okay, wow, I did not know that. Very cool.
Same.
Okay, well, that is really sad then that no one can go back to that place. Oh, that's a huge bummer. Do you think that there might be a chance that, I mean, maybe it sells again and somebody open to it?
I don't know if it's definitely in the hands of the new final owners, or if it's just whoever took it off the hands of the Masons that was going to be handling the sale, because there's some issues, I guess, with the Masons selling the property, because like they don't have to pay taxes or something. So there's like all these different issues that are involved. So somebody else had to come in and trust and take it over, and it was all kinds of hectic stuff. All I know is I got told by the people who were the Masons that we were dealing with there, that said, "Hey, just to give you a heads up, this place is going to be sold. So if you've got an extra $250,000 laying around and want to buy it, now would be the time." Right. And in the end, when you think about it, like $250,000 for this huge mansion is the steal of a century. But the biggest problem was nobody knew what the tax bill would be for it, because it had been a Masonic lodge for so long they had never paid property taxes.
Oh yeah, that could add up very quickly.
Especially with the footprint that it had and the amount of square footage that it had, and who knows.
So you mentioned the EchoVox, and you were the one that introduced me to that. So besides the EchoVox, what's one of your favorite or go-to items when you're investigating?
I really don't use anything anymore except the EchoVox.
Oh, okay.
One of the things that I will do is I will, because like my approach is I've kind of gone totally back to, being in the moment as opposed to trying to capture evidence. Yeah. And so I go to a place, I want to find the darkest, quietest room that I can find and just sit there and not make a noise and not even have even the light of a K2 meter on. Like, I just want to sit there in complete and total darkness. Let's see what happens. Let's see what kind of shadow play we get, and let's see if we can draw some of these energies out. And then when we do, then I'll open up because I have EchoVox on a tablet, so I'll use EchoVox on my tablet and I'll see what comes through, and we'll try. We've started incorporating the Estes method with EchoVox as well, so we'll do that as well. So that will bring us some really, really good results. The only other device per se that I'll use is you know how people have gone out and they've had those laser grids. That's like the little pen-shaped grid that you have to put an elastic on it to hold the button down, and then you have to put like a chip clip on it to make a stand and all that. Well, I decided that was too much work for me, so I went out and I bought the lazy lights that people put in front of their house for Christmas.
Okay.
It's like a round spotlight that shines red or green dots all over the front of your house.
Yeah.
And I bought one of those on clearance a couple of years ago after Christmas, and so now I just plug that in wherever we're going, as long as there's electricity. I plug that in and I leave that set up as like a permanent laser grid. And the best part about that is it stays lit the entire night with the same level of intensity, as opposed to the laser grid pens, which, the batteries start to die and the spirits can even draw the energy out of. So this way here you have a good, firm, consistent laser grid going all night that you can sit there and watch and see if any of these shadows actually disrupt the pattern.
Tim, you mentioned something called the Estes method. Would you mind explaining what that is?
Sure. So this is a new thing that's been developing over the last couple of years. There was the team that investigates the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, came up with this method. And people have been investigating with ghost boxes or Frank's boxes or spirit boxes, whatever you want to call them, for a long time. But basically all they are broken radios. They sweep through the radio waves without stopping, and the idea is that spirits can pull out the words that they want to use to communicate. So they decided that there's too much kind of confirmation bias in what you're asking, because you're asking a question, you're expecting a certain answer, so you're going to be listening until you hear that answer. And so they wanted to kind of take that bias out of it. And so what they would do is they would take a person, they would tie a blindfold around their eyes, and they would put noise-canceling headphones on them. And they would have the audio coming from the spirit box so loud that they wouldn't be able to hear any of the questions that were being asked from the people in the room. So everybody else that's in the room is asking the questions. The person who is under the method, the person who's there with the headphones on has to just repeat what it is that they're hearing without any interpretation, without any, guessing. Like, just say whatever your gut is telling you that's what you heard, and just say it, and you're not being influenced by the questions that are being asked. And so it was actually my friend Ty Gowan from Haunt Me who first introduced me to that at the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire. And so I said to him, well, I will do that, but like the SB7 spirit box, it's not loud enough for me to not be able to still hear what's going on even outside the noise-canceling headphones. So I pulled out EchoVox, and I said, I know EchoVox is so much louder, so I'm going to use that. And the first time that I did it, I felt like I was taken to another place. I'm sitting there, with the blindfold on and these headphones on, and I can't hear the questions. And all I can hear is EchoVox, which, for those who don't know, it's an app that is comprised of all the different phonetic sounds of human speech, but no actual words. And then it cycles through these banks, and spirits grab the phonetics to make the words they want to use to communicate. And so for something that has no words built into it, I've had my own name come through. I've had, full sentences, even full paragraphs come through. And it's amazing how this works. So I'm hearing like these little bits of phonetic speech as I'm kind of transported, almost like an out-of-body experience. I was in a long hallway, like in a hotel, but it was completely dark. And all the way down the hallway, I could see these rooms. And the doors, instead of just being flush with the hallway walls, they were all kind of in these little alcoves off the side of the main hallway. And as I'm walking down this hallway in my mind, every time I'd hear a phonetic sound, it was a door opening and somebody different behind that door making that noise. And it really kind of freaked me out a little bit, but it took some getting used to. And now that we have been utilizing that method more and more often, myself and Stephanie together, we've had some profound stuff come through. In fact, there's a YouTube video on the Spooky Southcoast page of when we were in Plymouth, Massachusetts, investigating the First Church of the Pilgrimage. And in that video, we have Stephanie and Ty are both on that method. They're both blindfolded and have noise-canceling headphones on. And not only were they answering questions that people in the room were asking, they were actually talking to each other.
Oh my
through
gosh.
the Echo Box, and we were getting some really strange stuff. At one point, they were like trying to tell knock knock jokes to each other. So one would say knock knock, the other would say who's there, and like it was very very strange, and
Wow.
it got pretty intense, and it ended up running for about an hour when we had only planned on doing it for 15-20 minutes, but we just couldn't stop because the stuff that was happening was so insane.
So I just pulled this up in the App Store, and I thought the last time I looked it was actually more expensive, which I'm not saying it's not worth it, but it's down to $19.99. I could have swore it was higher last time, so I implore everybody to go check that out. Is that Daniel, is it Roberge, or is that how you say it?
Roberge, yep.
Roberge,
Danny Roberge.
okay.
So so usually the general gist of it is that the iPhone version or the iOS version is $19.99, and the Android method is $29.99.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was more the last time I searched it, so I need to go ahead and get that.
I mean, I'll tell everybody a little bit of a trick too.
Yeah.
A little bit of a life hack here. If you have an Android phone or an Android tablet, and even if you don't, like you can go out and get an Android tablet that will run EchoVox. You can pick one of those up for like $30, and then what you do is you sign up for Google has the Google Rewards program. It's called Google Opinion Rewards. So it's an app that you download that will ask you survey questions based on where you go with your GPS and stuff like that. So it knows like, okay, I went to Subway today and bought a sandwich. It knows that I was at Subway today, which is a little creepy and a little big brotherish. But it'll ask you a question, and when you answer the question, you can earn anywhere from 10 to 50 cents for answering the questions. So you can build up a pretty good amount of money in your Google Play account pretty fast. And that's actually how I got EchoVox on my phone, is I just built up $30 in credit using that, and then just one day I was like, okay, I've got $30. I'm going to buy EchoVox now.
That's a nice life hack.
Yeah, it helps, and you can use it for other stuff too. Like even if you already have EchoVox, you can still download that app and then use it for like games or movies or whatever.
All right, so I know that we talked about how bad, really, honestly, even if you thought about it, to pull out your cell phone and try to record something, and how you actually are trying, and I completely agree, where you're trying to be more in the moment instead of, I have to capture this evidence, I have to capture the evidence. However, do you have something in your possession that you are really proud that you caught, or something that really still stuns you to this day?
I have something that is certainly one of the most talked about pieces of footage in the paranormal today. That would be, I've caught some EVPs and things like that will make your hair stand up on the back of your neck. But generally, nothing that I could ever say is going to be something that will convince a skeptical person. That's really what the key is when you're gathering evidence. Is you want to get something, or data really is what it is. You want to get something that's going to help convince a skeptic, and I don't think anything is really going to do that job. But
right.
when you can get a piece of evidence that people are talking about, or at least that they want to seek out, that's something that I can kind of put as a feather in my cap. And we were actually investigating the Murdoch Whitney house in Winchendon, Massachusetts, and one of the investigators that was with us is deaf. So she can't do a lot of the other stuff that we do when we're doing EchoVox or any of that kind of stuff. And we'd actually had some doppelganger experiences in this basement. So we were sitting in the dark trying to make those happen again. And she can't see the interpreter's sign language in the dark, so she doesn't know what's going on. So I told her to go off into this other area of the basement where she could use her SLS camera, and the light from the camera would not affect anybody else. And for those who don't know, an SLS is basically, it's like the Microsoft Kinect camera, and it maps all the physical motions of human movement. It will map all the points of articulation on a person and put them up on the screen as a stick figure. So you'll be pointing it down a hallway where there is nobody, and a stick figure will just show up. Or you'll be standing there and it'll map you, and then next to you will be a person, a stick figure, when there's nobody there. Now, there's a lot of false positives with these, so I need to have a stick figure that's actually going to do something and interact with me more than just pop into the screen. So in this case, we'd already had earlier in the night, there was a music room where we saw a stick figure that appeared out of nowhere that seemed to be playing a violin. And then when we had somebody sit down at the piano and start playing, the stick figure that was showing up on the camera actually kept time with whatever he was playing. Even if he slowed down to a dead stop, the violin playing would slow down to a dead stop. So that was already pretty cool. But when we were in this basement, I told her to go around the corner where nobody would see the light. And so around that corner was an old clawfoot tub just sitting in the basement. And sitting in that tub, we caught footage of a stick figure sitting in the bathtub like he was taking a bath. And as the interpreter, her name was Jessica, as Jessica was talking to the spirit, he went from kind of washing himself to, how can I put this?
Doing something else.
He started washing himself a little bit further south.
Yeah.
And then we realized he wasn't really washing anymore because he was already pretty clean down there by that point. And then the more she's like goading him on and encouraging him, at one point he just grabs onto that thing with two hands and goes to town.
Holy crap.
And you can see that on the Spooky Southcoast YouTube channel under the, Masturbating Ghost.
Masturbating Ghost. I will be linking that. Mm-hmm.
It's I started showing that at my library lectures this past October.
Yeah.
And that's usually when the older people would get up and walk out.
Ah.
Hey, it's their loss.
It is their loss because that's
clip.
actually incredible. And it ties in so well because there's a woman and she's talking to him and then he decides to go from one thing to the other. And if that's not interactive, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And her being,
awesome.
Her being who she is, she was more than happy to kind of, keep egging him on a little bit just for laughs. But it was, we brought the footage upstairs where everybody was. They were all gathered in the main room, and we said, we're going to show you this clip, and we're not going to tell you what we think is going on. And as soon as he starts doing it, everybody just starts laughing because the entire room just knew it was a ghost of a person sitting in a tub. And he's moving his hand up and down. I guess we can say shaft on this show, right?
Sure.
So
of course.
He's moving his hand up and down the shaft, and you can tell it's only going as far as it would have been.
No kidding.
So it's like, he could have lied about his size.
And the fish I caught was this big. Yeah. Is there audio included to where you can actually hear while Jessica's talking to him?
Yes, you absolutely can. Yep.
Awesome.
She recorded. She went Facebook Live on her cell phone as it was going on.
Oh wow, that's cool.
That's what we ended up uploading, and it's hilarious.
So that's the kind of evidence we need because I don't really know how you call that some kind of it's an artifact or it was a false, like you said, a false positive. No, don't think so. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's pretty. Not only is it pretty interactive, but think about it like this too. Like everybody thinks that when they go to a haunted place, that a ghost is going to be rattling the doors or banging on the walls or whatever. In actuality, like if I was a ghost and nobody could see me and there were some pretty girls around,
why not?
Maybe I just do that because nobody's going to know. It's not like all of a sudden they're going to get hit in the face with some ectoplasm or something. So,
quote unquote, ectoplasm.
he thought he was going to get away with it, and then once he realized he was caught, he said, "Well, screw it, I'm just going to go with it."
Yeah, he's probably like, forget it. Who cares? I've been gone this long. I'm doing my favorite pastime, so screw it.
Kind of into people watching me here, so
Right, it does seem like that. He's like, so voyeuristic. I like it. All right, I'll make sure to link that. So easy to remember, the masturbating ghost.
That's all you need.
All right, so Tim, what about your scariest moment or scariest experience? Do you have one? So
yeah, there's probably one. I mean, generally, I only really get scared if I think that I'm in danger.
Right.
Generally the activity doesn't really scare me. And I know that the activity really can't hurt me, but for me, it's more the environment of where I am is what I'm worried about. And there was this one time we were investigating a Civil War era fort up here in New Bedford, Massachusetts, called Fort Tabor, Fort Rodman. And they have a battery where it's built into the side of a hill. Somebody dug out a hill and built this battery where they used to store the munitions for the fort. And on top of that battery, they had cannons that were so powerful that the first time they test fired them, all the people in town that lived around the fort said, please don't ever fire that again unless it's necessary because you broke every dish in our house. So they have this battery, and we're investigating in there. And as we had one group that went in there, and then we're going in after that group. And so our first group had gone in, and one of the people was a medium. And she said, hey, just so you know, in the dead center of this battery, I saw a young boy, the spirit of a young boy a young man bent over, like with his hands over his head. He's in trouble and he was getting yelled at. So you might want to go and talk to him and see if you can figure out what's going on. So we go into the middle of this battery, this huge hill with this tunnel dug out of it, and we're in the dead center of this, where it's an H shape, and then on the long middle part of the H, there's this area that comes off of that, which is where we are. And the way that it's set up, there's no way that we're anywhere close to any of the entrances. They're pointing in the opposite direction. We could still feel a breeze coming into our face. So as we're feeling this breeze, I walk over into the corner and I'm like, there's a cold spot here. And as I'm trying to measure the temperature in that spot, it sounded like the roof was caving in on us. This noise just fills the room. And I thought we were going to die, because here we are in the dead center of this battery that's underground inside of a hill. And I'm just thinking, like, the roof's caving in. It's going to collapse on us. We're done. And everybody just starts freaking out. And then a couple of seconds go by and we realize nothing actually happened.
Wow.
The roof didn't move. There's no debris that has fallen down or anything. It was just the noise. And we played it back on our recorder and we brought it back to the headquarters for the night. We played it on a big sound system, and we couldn't really figure out what it was. It didn't dawn on us until we took it back to the group and played it for everybody that we realized, wait a minute. The medium said she saw a young man ducking with his hands over his head, and then we caught this loud sound. We think that it was the phantom cannon fire, and that the reason why the young man was ducking and covering was because he knew there was a fire in the hole.
Wow. And
so we just happened to catch that sound while we were there, and it's one of the only times I really thought I was going to die on an investigation.
Yeah, that would be traumatizing. I mean, I guess it's the same as, being in a cave somewhere. Caving and cavers have one of the most dangerous hobbies and pastimes you can have, right? So if something comes down on top of your head, you don't have a lot of options there, especially if there's nothing but a lot of earth or rock above you.
Right, and immediately your first thought is like, I'm trapped.
Right.
Like, you just expect it to be the end. There's no rationalization in your mind of, okay, how do I survive this? You're just immediately thinking like, nope, that's it. This is how I die.
So do you guys have mediums for your quote-unquote team, or are these local mediums from the area that just through word of mouth they come through and help you guys out?
Well, in the case of that one, it was actually a friend of ours' wife who had come to be part of the event, was a medium. But,
Right.
A few years ago, we added Stephanie Burke to our radio show. And so now she actually, we've been working with her for a long time. She was always at our events anyway.
Yeah.
But so now she's there pretty much everything that we do. So we utilize her kind of like, the way Hans Holzer used to use mediums, where she's like another tool in the toolbox, so to speak. But she's also a great investigative mind outside of having abilities. Like, she usually doesn't go to her abilities first. She tries to figure things out from an investigative standpoint. And like, just for an example, there's a historic building here in New Bedford that was turned into a restaurant, where my friend owns it and has been having some paranormal issues, or so she thought. So, we went there and investigated a couple times this past week. So it's like, okay, I'm not going in there and doing that unless Stephanie's coming, because I can get all the stuff in the world coming over the devices, but I need her to kind of help me with that connection to be able to kind and it makes a difference. If you have somebody that has actual honest to goodness abilities, then it makes a difference. If it's just somebody who has a twinkling of those abilities and thinks that that's enough for them to start calling themselves a medium, then you're dealing with an entirely different situation, because basically that's what happens is people just start to flex their intuition a little bit and utilize that intuition, and then think, okay, now I can go hang a palm reading sign in my storefront window, or I can start holding gallery readings and make all kinds of money. And it doesn't really work that way. It's no different. A medium who doesn't develop that skill and really work at it and turn it into something, you're looking at the difference between the guy who plays beer league softball on a Sunday and Babe Ruth.
Right. Totally agree. So with Stephanie, she's probably had this her whole life. Is she able to shut it off when she needs to, so she's not constantly overwhelmed? Yep.
She actually grew up, thinking that this was normal, because she has it and her mom has it and it runs in her family. So she grew up thinking like everybody could see these spirits. And it was actually more jarring to her when she learned that people couldn't. But she's developed over time a way to turn it off so that she's not always inundated. Otherwise, like, she could never go through an airport or go to the mall or anything like that. So she learn kind of coping mechanisms to help with that. And basically the way she always describes it to me is, you're like a light in the darkness for these spirits. Like, they're wandering around in nothing. And so then when somebody with these abilities comes in, it's like somebody turned on the porch light and all of a sudden you can find your way home. So what she just does is when she's somewhere where she doesn't want to encounter any of those spirits, she just turns that porch light off.
Wow. It's a kind of a sobering, almost sad way to think about it, right? As far as the spirits go, I mean, finally seeing a light after however long, and they're just flocking to it, and they're so interested in it, right? And they just want to talk and get it out. Right.
I mean, you kind of have to, you have to kind of put that humanity on hold a little bit. Just realize there's only so much you can do.
Absolutely.
Like the way she understands it from the way that she's talked to the spirit world is, they become more enlightened. So for the most part, it's not a lot of, wandering souls that are not at peace and don't understand what's going on. That does happen. But she knows for the most part, it's people that, have realized what's gone on, and so now they're just trying to just reach out and communicate. So she doesn't feel as bad. But it's kind of like, if you're a doctor and everybody knows you're a doctor, you're going to get all kinds of people that are going to come up to you and be like, hey, do you mind taking a look at this on my shoulder here? Right. So she just tries to look at it like, you don't go up to a doctor and ask them to take a look at whatever's growing on you.
Yeah, it wouldn't be proper. It wouldn't be a good etiquette, right? But a lot of people don't really have boundaries like that. So yeah, I could see where turning the porch light off would be a handy thing to be able to do.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it's from hanging out with her or just being in so many like different haunted places over the years, but I've started to develop a bit of a sense about it. Like, so I can know if I go into a place, I can kind of feel and be like, okay, there's definitely something going on here. Like, I'm not going to sit there and say that spirits come up to me and I talk to them, and I would never want that. But I do find, like, the more people do this and the more they open themselves up to it, they'll kind of get those same connections. And so now it's kind of like, it helps too that not only does she know how to turn that porch light off, but like I can kind of pick up on it and feel a little bit and be like, okay, wait a minute, like this is not somewhere you should be right now. Like, because, sometimes her natural curiosity takes over, and sometimes I have to be the voice of reason and say, you probably don't want to go in there right now. Just because it helps to have that voice in your ear telling you it's okay to not do it.
Right. So what's next on the docket, except for the cruise coming up? That's still a little ways away. Do you guys have any investigations coming up that you can talk about?
I'm running something on December 8th at the Oliver House in Middleborough, and I'm very excited about that because, anytime I can get back in there is good, but also it's going to be our first ever, it's the latest that we've ever done an event, doing one in December. So, we're hoping that maybe, being Christmas season, maybe we'll get some more spirit activity because, Christmas used to be a time for ghost stories. Right. It's fallen by the wayside in terms of tradition. So we're hoping that because it's a house from the 1700s, they would have lived in a time when ghost stories were part of the traditional Christmas celebration. So we're hoping that we can get in there and maybe start off by telling a few ghost stories and see if we can actually get the spirits to come out and manifest as a result of that.
That's right. Merry freaking Christmas, right? Let's tell some ghost stories. Let's get scared a little bit at least.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I do a whole lecture called "It's Okay to Be Scared." Like, you really do want to have some. There's a reason why we have the ability to be scared. Yeah. It's not only just to keep us safe, but it's also to keep us sharp. And so if you have that little bit of fear in what you're doing and you have that little bit of trepidation, you're going to be more tuned into more dialed into your surroundings than you would be if you're like, this stuff happens all the time. It's okay. Don't be worried about it. And then you're desensitized to it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on for this Thanksgiving edition of Into the Fray. And I already know this is Weisberg Part 1 because I know you have more stories. We won't have time to get to it on the round. But please let everybody know where to find you. Plug anything that you want because I know that people want to check out, your videos, the book, and of course, Spooky Southcoast.
Well, of course, the easiest way is just as you said, SpookySouthcoast.com. is where you can find the show. It's where you can find the link to our YouTube channel where we have all of our videos, because we actually have live streaming video Saturday nights while we're doing the radio show that people can watch on YouTube. You can also get a hold of me on Twitter at Tim Wise, and on Facebook as well, Instagram, Snapchat, everything. I spend my whole day in front of a computer in my day job, so I'm always willing to take a message or a snap or something, or a tweet with people asking me about ghosts, because it kind of breaks up the mundaneness of the day.
That's right. Well, yeah, Tim, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you and to all the listeners out there.
And to you as well, and I hope Bigfoot brings you a nice big turkey to go with your prime rib.
That would be amazing. The Yucca Man would just come sauntering out of the woods somewhere and be like, I was here the whole time. You went to Ohio. You were in Washington State searching for me. Texas. I was right here.
You have to depend. See, you're worried about salmonella because you have to buy a store-bought turkey. See, around here, like, I can walk out of the door of this radio station. There's going to be a dozen turkeys walking by my face.
So what you're going to see? You have your butcher. What do they call it? The butcher block machete? Not a machete. We're not in the jungle. This is in the Amazon. What the hell is it? The cleaver. Damn it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to kill a turkey, but if somebody else wants to do it, I'll eat it.
Right. The freshly plucked and everything. No salmonella worried.
Tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to Plymouth Plantation, so I'll get to have the traditional Thanksgiving food there. So they do that, like, they start like on Monday of Thanksgiving week, and they go all the way through Black Friday, like just doing these traditional Thanksgiving meals like the Pilgrims would have eaten. And some of the stuff is really weird, like stuff we wouldn't eat today. So I'm always game for that.
I would love to be there. I love Massachusetts. I mean, first of all, it's, when you're in certain areas of Massachusetts, there's so much history. We can cover Salem. That's a whole nother topic. I'm sure you've been there probably 24 times. That's, like I said, part 2. Iceberg, part 2 coming up. But there's just nowhere like it. I love Massachusetts. So many stories, so many old buildings, so much history.
Absolutely. I mean, where else can you go and investigate places from the 1600s? So
not many.
It's well worth coming out here for anybody that's never been here.
Yeah, because everyone's, and, we don't have a lot on good old Great Britain, my original quote-unquote hometown, but if anything comes close, it'd be a lot of those places out east in Massachusetts, and those really old buildings, 1600s, I mean, please. Around here in Vegas, we're like, oh, that building is 80 years old. I'm like, God, it's ancient. You're like, no, not so much. It's cute. You're so cute. Yeah, so, all right, well, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. example, are quite divided on this. They will say, no, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.